best.
Opening round, Michael.
Yep.
Geelong are at home to Fitzroy, who'd played in the finals the previous year.
Yep.
The Geelong centre liners Turner, Williams and Ablett.
Yep.
Two blokes playing their first game in Geelong colours.
Yep.
You had 88 disposals between you and 4 goals.
Well, the centre line didn't stay together too long, but it was always the famous Richmond one compared to that. But, I think we only played 3 or 4 times together. But, look, that's when Ablett was at his absolute best. He was an animal.
Did he shock you when you saw him, say, that day and that season?
Look, he shocked me in the pre-season because I was already getting my head around Greg Williams and getting fairly excited that we were building a really good side. And Ablett, came down with a massive reputation that Bill McMaster said he's the best, footballer we've recruited. And he said, oh, yeah, OK. There's a lot of great players have been through the club. And one night at training, we had kick to kick, the old-fashioned kick to kick. You'd get into fours and you'd practice your marking. And I was paired with Gary Ablett. And look, I rated myself. I could mark against the best of them. I reckon the ball was kicked up and down 20 times and I was one-on-one with Gary Ablett. And the only time I got it was when he dropped it once. So I just couldn't get near him. Physically, I could not get near him. I couldn't jump with him. I could not get the football. And I walked to Tommy Hafey after that and said, look, Bill McMaster's right. We've got something really special here. And he was. Very special.
He was.
Yeah.
He's a bloke with the same name that went through the Geelong Falcons under you.
Yeah.
Gary Ablett Jr. is pretty special too, isn't he?
Very special.
Yeah, how
very
special?
People ask me this question a lot. So Gary Ablett, definitely the most spectacular player I've ever seen, probably that's ever played AFL. And he's up there with Carey and all those people, Tony Lockett. But Gary Ablett Jr. to me is a better player because he's an all-round player. He defends, he masses the ball, he makes other players play well, he tackles, he kicks goals, he does a lot. He's not as spectacular as his father, but to me, being involved in the football industry, when you watch the whole gamut and you look at all the stats, he's a better player. I personally think Gary Ablett Jr. is the greatest player that's ever played the game. You
have a rare distinction, Michael. You are probably the only person in history to drop Gary Ablett.
That's a good trivia question, isn't it? So, and look, the story is we were having a training run down at Warrnambool, and the bus was supposed to leave Heighton Reserve, our base, at a certain time, and we get there, and of course Gary wasn't there. He just finished playing for Victoria in the National Championships. He'd left school, was surfing, and he said it to himself at the Brownlow last year. He not that he lost direction, but he slept in a couple of times. So of course we're waiting for the bus. He wasn't there. We head down to Warrnambool. I ring him on the way down. I think we had the big motor rollers at that stage. And get onto him. He's very apologetic, and I said, look, I'll go down and talk to the match committee about it. But in dealing with his father when he was at Geelong, Gary Ablett Sr. got away with a lot. And I was very, I suppose, mindful of the fact I didn't want him going down the same track, and he didn't. He was a fantastic kid. So we made the decision, with my direction, I suppose, to the match committee that we're going to drop him for a game. So I told him after that we're going to just drop him for one game for missing training. We've arrived at Warrnambool. There were 300 people there waiting for us to train, not to watch the Falcons, to watch Gary Ablett Jr. And after they found out he wasn't there, I reckon there were 5 people there. So he was even big then. Is he the best player that you saw at the Geelong Falcons? As a 16, 17-year-old, the best player I've ever had at the Falcons was Luke Hodge. At that age, 16, 17, he was more mature than Gary Jr. and he was just an absolute champion at 16. He's the only 16-year-old I've played outside a boy called Hugh Goddard, who's coming through the system at the moment, and he played in their premiership as a 16-year-old and he played as a 17-year-old. So he was an outstanding player. You allegedly said to Hawthorn, you'll embarrass yourself if you don't take Luke Hodge at number 1. Is that true? It is true. We went. We had to make a presentation. The coach Damien Christensen and I, and on the 3 clubs that came through, they had 3 names on the board. There was Chris Judd, Luke Ball, and obviously Luke Hodge. And we went and made a presentation, and all the, Swabby was there, Johnny Hook was there, my current boss, and all the match committee went through every player. Now every player, and I rated every player as I saw them. You've got to remember Chris Judd was coming off 2 shoulder operations, and he was a top age player. Luke Ball was 17, still going to Xavier. But in the end, I said, we were talking about Luke Hodge, and I just said, look, what does the Hawthorn Football Club want? And they said, we want someone who can go and play down back and shore us up, go into the midfield and get the ball out of the centre, and maybe push him forward and kick a goal. I said, well, if that's what you want, you need to pick Luke Hodge, because Luke Hodge can do all those things. And I said, if you don't pick Luke Hodge, at some stage down the track, it will come back to bite you and it may embarrass you. So, look, Judd's a great player. Ball's a great player. Luke Hodge is what they asked for, and it's what they got. Did you tell Jimmy Bartell to take his helmet off? I did, well, yes, him and his mother, and there was a reason for it. When you're selling players to recruiters, there's a lot of perception out there, and recruiters are they're becoming more conservative. It's all about risk management now. So you need to do certain things with players so that they're presented to the AFL recruiters in the best light possible. So you do certain things, and we've done certain things with players to make them look more presentable. I'll give you another example of that. Cameron Ling. It's true.
get a haircut, shorten your shorts, is that right?
Well, Cameron played as a 17-year-old and was as good as any player, but he played full forward for us and he wasn't tall. And in his 18th year, I was very fear of him not being drafted, and he might dispute this, but it's fact that we said to him, we need to get your hair cut, so that you've got short back and sides. It makes you look more athletic and taller. Make sure you pull your socks up to make your legs look longer. And we actually got him a size 20 pair of shorts, but size 20s, you don't want them hanging down here, and we got his mother to shorten them so that his legs look longer. Now, we changed the position. He didn't play full forward. We played him centre-half back, centre-half forward, ruck rover. So he played a different role, and I was still fearful in that draft that he wouldn't get drafted, and Geelong, thank God, took him.
Jonathan Brown, Michael.
Yep.
Played a game for the Falcons. I think he's 16 and you're playing the Dandenong Stingrays.
He would have been 17, I think.
17?
Yep.
And there was an altercation, Lawrence Angwin and Jay Brown.
Yep.
There's the young Jay Brown there.
He's young there, isn't he?
Yeah, pick the story up for me.
Well, just out at Dandenong, and Brownie was a very strong player, and the ball was just, he went for a marking contest in front of the grandstand. I was sitting up in the coach's box, and it was just before half time, and a player who we didn't know at the time was Lawrence Angwin whacked him. I could see Brownie go to the ground, and his eyes went straight up to look to see who hit him. He stood up and gave him a round armour and knocked him out completely. So the timing wasn't perfect at Dandenong, as you can imagine, Mick, and the siren rang about 30 seconds later, and the place just erupted. So we got everyone inside at half time and calmed things down. And I was really wondering whether we should put him out in the second half, because I was a bit fearful what could happen. And Brownie being Brownie said, "Hey, mate, I'm what he's like. I'm going out in the second half, and I'll go out and play." So he went out and played in the second half, and knowing Brownie as Brownie, he took 20 marks in the second half. He was
literally 20.
20 marks.
Yeah. You've got two boys, two sons.
Yep.
Do they ever say, "Dad, why can't we go down to Cardinia Park, and why don't we go into the rooms, and why don't we mix with the players?"
They're not really footy head kids, and
Are they Geelong supporters?
Yeah, well, Shay, my youngest one's a North Melbourne supporter for some reason.
Why?
Well, he just likes the Kangaroos for some reason, but they frustrate
Even
the
though
hell
his
out of him.
dad was the captain of Geelong.
Yeah, but I just think they'd been to functions with me. I'm not the sort of person that hangs around the past players and goes to the footy. I mean, I work in football. I've got a Falcons game on every weekend. I don't go to AFL games. I certainly watch it on the TV. I watch football on the TV all the time, not so much to watch Geelong, but to watch the boys that have come out of the Falcons. Like I'll watch Gary Ablett Jr. or Jack Stephen at St Kilda. That's my main interest. I watch those boys. So I watch a lot of footy, but my boys, they watch footy on the TV, but we're not the sort of family that want to be down the Geelong Footy Club all the time or in the past players. I'm just not like that.
Do you love Geelong?
I am a Geelong person, and I love Geelong because of the fact...
Do you love Geelong Football Club?
Yes, I do. 100% I do, because my father played for Geelong, I played for Geelong. You don't play at a club for 15 years and not love it. There are some aspects of the Geelong Football Club I don't like, but that's more an individual thing. That's just things that have happened over the years. But people who look at me, I'm a Geelong person, and I love the Geelong Football Club, and I am in awe of the success they've had for the last 10 years, Mike. But at the same time, being human, you get envious of it as well. You'd love to be a part of it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
The year I retired in '88, when John Devine coached, Malcolm Blight took over the next year. We couldn't make the finals, so I'm off coaching Werribee. Geelong that year were top of the ladder. They were 1 minute off winning a premiership. And Paul Couch, who was my best mate, who was dropped by John Devine a couple of times the year before, won the Brownlow medal. So you sit there that year, the year after you retire, and people have got to understand that you do become envious, because of the fact that you've just retired and they've had this magnificent success and you've just missed it. You know what I mean?
That's honest.
And that's just being honest. People, you're not bitter about it. You're just envious. You'd love to be a part of that success. And when Geelong had that under Malcolm Blight, and the sustained success they've had the last 10 years, as an ex-player, you look at that and say, gee, I'd love to be a part of that.
Particularly when you played only 6 finals for 2 wins.
Yep.
So it wasn't as if you...
No, that's right.
Yeah.
And look, the big thing in those days for people like Robbie Flower again and myself and other players is that if you're in a team that wasn't playing finals, playing for Victoria was a big thing in those days. That's gone out of the game. But playing State of Origin for Victoria against South Australia or Western Australia, the people like Robbie Flower and I that weren't involved in finals year in, year out, that was a massive game for us. And those State of Origin games were more difficult than finals. I'm not saying they're more difficult than the grand final, but the finals I played compared to State of Origin was a lot harder because you were playing against such great players.
Did you rise to that level?
I loved it. I just loved playing for Victoria. It was a fantastic thing to be a part of. You go away with all these champions and you'd be sitting there and you're a part of it and you go and play with these players. It was just, that was one of the real highlights of my career.
Is there a regret?
I just think at various times because of my personality, and I've got to take responsibility for this, particularly when I was younger, that my attitude should have been better. But you weren't a full-time professional then, Mike. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in your life. You had to work, you had family and all those things. But if you're playing football now, and let's say you're on $800,000 and you're a full-time professional, you'd be doing absolutely 100% everything right to make sure you played well every
When
week.
you mean your attitude, I mean, were you sooky? Were you? Did you resent the authority, or what are you talking about?
I think my attitude was more about, I'll explain it this way. If we were playing at the MCG in front of 85,000 people like we did in 1980, there's a massive crowd there and it was a massive game, I would always play well. If I went to State of Origin, generally I thought I played pretty well. Attitude I'm talking about, if I went to the Western Bulldogs, on a wet day, bad condition, there was 6,000 people there and I wasn't super motivated, well, I'd probably play an average game.
Did that lead to confrontations with your coaches?
It did, yeah. It was particularly with Billy Goggin. Billy became frustrated with me a fair bit, I think, because my really good performances were, as good as anything, but my bad performances were pretty bad.
So when he leant on you, did you answer back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a pretty thorough relationship, Bill and I. He dropped me a couple of times and, he brought me back into the side, to psychologically get me up and... I appreciate. I actually liked his coaching. Thought his coaching was really good.
We talked about Brian Peake, Michael.
Yes.
He's in the Hall of Fame. Are you envious?
I'm envious a little bit, and let me just categorise and say that Brian Peake was a fantastic State of Origin player and a great player for East Fremantle. When he came to Geelong, as we spoke about before, look, he was a very good player, but he wasn't a great player at Geelong. There were, I think, better players at Geelong at that time, and he was a very, very good player, but not a great player. So
It is the Australian Hall of Fame. It is the Australian Football Hall of Fame.
I know, and I understand what the AFL is doing, and he was probably nominated by the West Australian Football League, and I'm not having a go at that. I'm happy for Brian Peake to be in the AFL Hall of Fame, but I think what the AFL has got to do is they've got to be fair on the people that may have been overlooked that aren't in the Hall of Fame. And I'll give you an example, and I'm not knocking Western Australian football or South Australian football, but the VFL in those days was always still the AFL because the best players came and played in the VFL. Malcolm Blight, Mike Fitzpatrick, Graham Melrose, you can mention them all. Kenny Hunter came and played in the VFL. So it was a very high standard competition. So fair enough to put other people from other states in the AFL Hall of Fame, but please have a look at the players that played for 10 to 15 years and were great AFL players in the VFL then, like Jeff Rains. Is he in the Hall of Fame?
No, he's not.
Well, he should be.
I agree.
Wayne Johnson?
Same answer.
Well,
no, he's not, and
he should be.
Yep.
Trevor Barker. So all I'm saying is just make things even. So if you're going to recognise Rick Davies or Graham Corns or Brian Peake, I'm happy with that. But please recognise the players that played long careers in the VFL, AFL, because they were great players also.
What about Michael Turner?
Well, that's for other people to judge. But, I would like to think that when you look at people's records, that, my record's as good as Brian Peake's.
We did love watching you play. You were a highly skilled player and gave us lots of thrills.
Yeah.
And you made a massive contribution to football over the journey. So great to trawl through that, and good luck for the future.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
This has been a Fox Footy production for Fox Sports.